can enable accessibility to people which we haven't imagined before. And that's thanks to technology breakthrough that we have. And I won't take much time of yours because Keith Kirkland has a very exciting presentation ready here. And I will hand over to Keith Kirkland. Thanks for joining, and I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us here at the conference. I'm super excited to kind of share what we've been working on with you for the past few years. And my goal here in this master's class is to really give you a sense of what the world looks like potentially through haptics, through our own personal example, and hopefully it inspires some of your own personal explorations. Now, our company is called WearWorks, and we build products and experiences that communicate information through touch. Sorry about that. Communication through touch. The idea is that the skin is there and it's available, and what if we could offload some of the information directly into it? And the way we explored this space is we built a wearable product called Wayband, which is a haptic navigation device. And I'll get into a bit about how it works and what we've used it for. But mainly, I want to start with this idea of haptics. I know in a lot of our personal presentations, we come across people, and also a lot of times they've never heard of the word. And so what we're trying to do is, haptics means of or relating to the sense of touch. That can be anything from, burning the roof of your mouth if you bite into a hot slice of pizza, or, the hug of a loved one that you haven't seen for a really long time. Your skin is constantly taking in external information, is one of the 5 major senses and is the largest sensory organ in the body. And so we were looking at the possibilities of touch and wondering how can we explore that. And this is what we decided to do with our whole concept of haptic design that we're calling it right now. So why innate sensitivity akin to the eye's ability to recognize millions of colors, or the ear's ability to recognize complex pitch and tone. But as a communications channel, it's been largely relegated to Morse code like cell phone notifications. If you really look at the possibilities, like if someone were to grab you, you could tell whether it was aggression or love almost in an instant. And so we saw the possibility of what the human body was capable of understanding as far as touch through our personal and interpersonal relationships. But we also saw what was actually being done with this medium as a form of design and as a form of communication. And we thought that there was a lot of space in that gap to play in, and we got super duper excited about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about really a lot of our lessons were kind of like learned in this space. And so I just want to kind of like bring some things up that I think might enable people to kind of start to tap into this idea of what haptics could be. And, by tapping into your own personal experience of feeling through touch. Right. And so the haptics handbook, the first thing that we realize is in order to really understand touch, you have to close your eyes. And if you look at it like a hard drive, right? A video file takes up a huge amount of space. An audio file takes up a lot less space. And then you look at a touch, it can be so dampening or so minuscule compared to the over-sensory of information that you're getting through your visuals that it's really, really easy to not pay attention. But even right now, like feeling the fabric on your body, like feeling you sit in the chair, where the pressure is on different points, how much tension is in your muscles. Like this is all touch-based information that your body is communicating. And often you can't really pay attention to it with your eyes open because you're so overstimulated. So we built a Wayband app as part of our device. And now I want you to imagine this imaginary route is where you are in a new coffee shop that you're trying to find. Right? You're trying to meet a friend there. Now, I want you to imagine how you would walk that route. Now I want you to do me a favor. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that same route without access to any sight at all. Now, you'd be walking along the street, probably like a blind person. Maybe you'd have a cane or a dog to support you. Your cane or your dog would tell you what's directly in front of you, like the fire hydrant or this person, or maybe that potted plant that's on the side of the road. But it's not going to help you get to the coffee shop. Meanwhile, the audio in your GPS navigation is an amazing tool, but your ears are your eyes. And so sometimes it can be hard to hear what's going on in the surrounding environment. And you need your ears to kind of keep yourself safe. That's how you do situational awareness. You can open your eyes now. And so that leads directly into our next point of developing a deep empathy for the user and their particular situation. When we first set out, we really thought about this. We thought it'd be a universal thing that everyone would just understand, you know? But then we realized that like it's not as language based as we thought, where a haptic is a haptic is a haptic across every situational and context, the same way the word computer is computer. What it really is it's, I guess the best way to describe it is it's very situational. Like a push from your wife underneath the kitchen table after you've said something might be very different than a push from your wife at the kitchen table after you give her a gift, right? And so it's very, very contextual, this idea of touch. And so we tried to start with this concept of what is our user really doing? And now in our particular case, we were interested in the idea of navigation. And we thought that, wow, visual navigation isn't necessarily the safest way to navigate sometimes, right? We've all seen it, people walking down the streets not paying attention to where they're going. Then we looked at some cases where it was like, not only was it not safe, but it was ridiculously not sensible, right? You know, like I've seen people riding down the streets in New York City all the time, one hand on their phone looking at a map while they're riding down the street, right? And then, of course, there's an entire population, 285 million people worldwide, for which this isn't possible. And so when we were digging into our user and what they were looking for, we were really trying to understand, like, what information might they want? From what point of view are they coming to communicate to them? We started with the idea of tourists. We eventually started talking to runners and cyclists, and we landed in a use case of the blind and visually impaired. It was pretty obvious that it was going to be a great use case for us, but it was really, really challenging. And one of the things that we realized is that by doing the most challenging thing, we actually showed more of what was possible in the space. And so challenge yourself, I guess, to really build out something that you really think is worthwhile. The idea of haptics is your user doesn't care about haptics. They care about their experience, and they care about the information that they're getting and how they feel about that information. So as a haptic designer, it can be really easy to just geek out about, oh my God, this is amazing, you know, new haptic feeling, try this. But that has to go into the context of really what the user needs and what they want. The other thing is that, you know, in the case of haptics, instead of seeing, like feeling is really believing. We built these devices and, you know, like unless you were actually physically holding a device, you had no idea what the device was doing. And so we tried to find different ways to visualize some of that. But the thing that is really important is that like we sketch directly in haptic. You know, like in the same way, like if you're doing a sculpture, like maybe you'll start with some line drawings to get some inspiration, but ultimately you're going to start sketching in clay as soon as you get a chance to. That's how you get a feel for what it is that you're really working with, right? And with haptics, it's the same thing. We sketch with haptics. We made some monstrosities. We hacked together anything, you know. My co-founder, Kevin, sacrificed his really beautiful watch for our experiment. But we needed it felt, and we jumped in like directly to the experience of what was going on first. This is an example of one of our prototypes. Before we were called Wayban, our company was called Beyond Sight, and all of our prototypes were aptly named BS. And so this is BS number 2. And as you can see here, we're playing with an accelerometer, and we're going back and forth. We added the lights so that you can understand what the vibrating motors were doing. And so people, because everyone would run in to like grab the prototype and like touch everybody. And, you know, we redefined a whole new way of moving with touch in the office. It's amazing. But this was just a way better tool to like visualize what's going on. And so this is what one of our early experiments that we got super duper excited about, right? And so the other thing that you have to work on is when exploring this haptic space, you really need a clear measure of what progress is. You know, like metrics really define the success of course, what the project is. And for us, when we set out, we had a pretty audacious measure of what progress might look like. And I'm going to play a little video for you so that you can see for yourself.
My name is Keith Kirkland, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of WearWorks. We design products and experiences that communicate information through touch. Our first product is called a navigation device for the blind and visually impaired. Basically, we figured out a way to guide people to an end destination using only vibration without the need for visual or audio cues at all. We started with the use case of navigation. Initially, we just wanted to get people out of their phones and back into the real world. But the more we dug into it, the more we realized that the power of the blind use case was so profound because no one had come up with a solution really to address. The first person that we met who was blind was Marcus Engel.
When I first started using the device, I wasn't really sure what to expect. Really, it ended up turning out to be even better than what I was imagining. The ability to convey information to me just through vibrations and vibration patterns was really amazing. And not only that, but when it wasn't vibrating, it's still giving information that I am on the right path and navigating in the right direction. It was completely intuitive. While I was out using the device, there were 2 or 3 motorcycles that drove by. If I was using the voiceover feature on the iPhone to navigate, I wouldn't be able to hear that over the outside sound. That was an ability to bring in another one of my senses and be able to navigate with that sense of touch.
Work with Marcus, and then ultimately Simon, who's our blind marathon runner, he reached out to us and said that if we could have a device ready for him, he would run the New York City Marathon with it this year. We knew it could work, but it had a lot of kinks that needed to be worked out. And so over the 6 months, we worked with Simon. We sent him the devices to test. We broke devices. He broke devices. We sent them new devices to test. Within a few weeks of the marathon, where we finally had a product that we thought really could do what it needed to do to get Simon through the entire race. And so on November 5th, 2017, Simon got to make history as the first blind person to run a New York City Marathon unassisted.
So we had a pretty audacious goal. And to be totally honest, we had no idea that it could actually be done. The product and the idea was very simple, but paired with Simon connecting with us and reaching out to us and deciding for himself that like, hey, if you guys have this ready in the next 6 months, I'll run a marathon with it, was the push that we really needed to like drive the performance up, you know, like by almost a factor of 10 in that period. And so picking a goal that's worthy of achieving with haptics, a lot of times haptics can be looked at as almost as a back thing that kind of occurs. And so we challenge ourselves to kind of like make haptics the central theme of whatever piece it is that we're working on. And the thing is that like in the case of Simon, the thing that we're really excited about is that there are 285 million more people like Simon in the world. And so we saw the opportunity of making a really huge impact by making this really small proof case. Right. And then, you know, I think that my final point is really that you have to create a safe space to fail. Most people have not heard of this word before, and most people have no idea of what the possibilities are outside of sending you a vibration notification. And so we were testing out lots of different things, and my team and I, we fail miserably on a regular basis every single day. That's kind of like how we get progress. And so I want to kind of encourage really a deep sense of exploration, and also put some really big ideas out there, and don't be afraid to not hit them, because a lot of times along the way in building these haptic experiences, you're doing stuff that no one's ever done before, that no one's ever thought of before. So of course it doesn't work the first, the 10th, sometimes even the 20th time. But the exploration is fun and it's exciting, and every failure is bringing about new possibilities of what could be. And so those failures actually add up to a really wonderful potential that can really take your product or your idea or your experience to the next level. And so speaking of failure, Simon didn't actually complete the entire marathon. He only ran the first 15 miles of it, right? We had a failure actually along the way that was pretty catastrophic as far as the device is concerned. Simon did finish the marathon. He was totally safe. We had backup runners just to make sure that if the technology did fail. But I'll let Simon talk a little bit more about his own personal story.
My name's Simon Wheatcroft. I live in the UK. I'm a blind marathon runner. This year I was quite nervous. It was something that has never really been done in a city marathon. 7 years ago, I never thought I'd get to the point where I could run solo the biggest marathon in the world. So there was two pieces of technology. There was one that went around your chest, so that was using ultrasonic sensors. And if it detected someone, depending on the distance from me, it would do a different vibration. So then the other bit was actually navigating the course, keeping me en route and when to turn and things like that. We started off on the bridge that goes from Staten Island to Manhattan. And that was great. It was working fantastically well. The rain started to deteriorate the performance of the ultrasonic sensors. It was functioning, but I couldn't concentrate on the sort of level it deteriorated to. So that was the point where now it's a safety issue. We really need to, stop using the technology and bring in the sort of guide runner that we had as backup. So it was when I was just entering my teenage years, I went to the specialist and I was told, look, you've got retinitis pigmentosa. You're going to go blind. I felt that I was coping with the sight loss quite well. But what I was actually doing was beginning to restrict what I did because I couldn't see. So I was starting to leave the house less. Well, I started running around 7 years ago. It all changed when I ran the open road. The first time I ever did it, just under half a mile in, I just stopped and broke down in tears because I just couldn't believe that I was out there running alone on the open road. And it felt incredibly freeing. I've run a few city marathons, and the crowd support in New York is still unique. I think the important thing is, until people are willing to go out there and discover if these things are possible, they'll never even get the technology to exist. Do you want to tell that you quit? Or do you want to tell that you got to the end? Let's see what I can do next.
Well, I guess kind of to wrap things up, this is a really interesting space to play in. We're drawing on inspiration and ideas from lots of different fields. We're looking at sound generation and sound creation as inspiration for haptic explorations. We're looking at gestures and how people respond to one another in physical settings and trying to understand what things we can leverage from our personal experiences in the world to bring into the haptic space. At one time, we were trying to design a stop that felt really intuitive. And instead of giving you buzz, 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 and you learning over time that means stop, what we decided to do instead is what if we gave the device a jerk? So that most people have the experience of being on a vehicle and having the vehicle stop suddenly. So we thought that like everyone would get that experience and understand like, oh, that is going to mean stop. And we found that when we tried it out with people, like that's exactly what happened. Like people would walk and then they would get the jerk and then they would all of a sudden stop, not recognizing even what the jerk meant. And so it's like, how can we tap into the psychology of, you know, cultural experiences to really bring about gestures out of that and distill them into potential haptic possibilities, right? So I want to thank you so much. We've had a lot of partners that have helped us over the time. I just want to like give a super quick thanks to them. And we'll be launching a Kickstarter on 9/20, and we're going to make an SDK eventually. And so love for you guys to check it out. And at this point, I'll take any questions. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Keith, for this wonderful talk. It's really inspiring. And in last 20 minutes, I could imagine lots of different things thanks to the way you delivered and the stuff that you have prepared here. I have seen your TED talk as well, and having read more about, inspired by you, having read more about haptic design. One thing that I liked is the inclusion that it enables, that people who were not able to access the technology, they can do so. And the different kind of use cases which are being enabled. So one thing that I'm really passionate about and would love to explore how haptic design can come in this place, in this field. Would love to have your thought on that. That is remote work. So we want to have inclusion at Invite. Our aim is to have inclusion for everyone without the barrier of location. So someone who is sitting like you are in New York and I am in Bangalore in India. So how we can enable efficient work within these people who are not at same location? Is there any way that you can imagine that haptic design can enable this or help this or aid?
Yeah, so I mean, like there's a lot of there's a lot of work being done in the telepresence space, right? And so like like we've already augmented audio, we've augmented video. We have people that are working on like explorations around like how to make that human. I think right now, the thoughts around like potentially connecting people in a space of using haptics. The idea that I really like is like this idea of like interpersonal communication. Like me and my co-founders, most of the time we're not in the same room together. Like we're all running around doing different parts of the business. We're often in different parts of the world. And so we've gotten to this thing where we do these random calls. It's like 15 minutes, like, hey, what are you doing right now? And just to check in to see and like to show that the lines of communication are kind of always open. And so like right now, all of that stuff is done through audio, but like, it'd be great if I could like tap my co-founder to like send them a message and be like, oh, hey, let's connect here. Or, like high five here. And so we're looking and playing around with this idea of like, can we express like slight emotional experiences in a haptic way? But also, once again, to not get to the point where it's like dash, dash, dash means happy. Like, can we design an experience that like, okay, like, oh, you did a great job. And like everyone gives you a high five and you feel it kind of like piling up like through your quote unquote, like haptic feed in a way. And so we do see some possibilities in that space. The idea of inclusion is actually really super significant for us. Like we spent a lot of time working with the blind and visually impaired. We've talked to people who were deafblind, the Helen Keller Foundation. We've talked to people who are deaf, people who had Parkinson's, and they all saw very different opportunities and possibilities and use cases for our technology. It was almost like making the device, because people would write us emails and they would design experiences that our product did that was never, ever anything we thought of. And we're like, hey, how did you even imagine this as a possibility? Like, why do you think this works? And then somehow they'll be like, oh, well, if you do this, and that, then this would be great for this group of people. And I'm like, wow, we could totally do something like that. Let's run that experiment and see if it's really worthwhile. And so it's really interesting because a lot of people thought we were doing assistive technology when we started. And we were like, no, we're not doing assistive technology. This is not a blind experience. This is actually an everybody experience. It's just a lot more people have access to the sense of touch. And so it becomes inclusive by design.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for the answer. So to the audience, you can ask your questions and we will connect you with Keith directly and you can ask him questions. So just, I think we have, okay. Just, okay. Yeah. So Devashish, you can ask your question to Keith.
Hello. Hi, Keith. Thanks for the inspiring talk you just gave. So my question is a little bit more towards the technology side of this. You mentioned about experiences, and the one thing you mentioned that you did a lot of experiments early on to find out what worked and what not. So for someone who wants to start out in this field, what kind of tools or technologies would you recommend that they get themselves acquainted with to be able to create such kind of hardware or do such kind of experiments on their own?
Yeah, perfect. No, that's great. Great question. And thank you so much. Yeah, no. So I think the main things that you really need to arm yourself with is really just kind of like some basic Arduino programming, and that whole ecosystem is so well set up for hardware. Like you can buy haptic motors, you can buy haptic drivers, you can buy orientation sensors, you can buy ultrasonic sensors, you can buy light detection sensors, LiDAR sensors, and you can kind of like, it democratizes the ability to kind of just like create hardware on your own from like off the shelf components and breakout boards. And so I think that's the way I would go. Like when we got into this space, like I don't have a background in electrical engineering. I taught myself to code our first prototypes. Like we taught ourselves hardware basically. And so like the Arduino platform like was essential because like if we didn't have that accessibility to just kind of be able to just jump in and like now we have a whole electrical engineering team, like they do great work. I can barely understand the work that they do at this point. It's gotten so complex, but like to be able to just like, oh, here's an idea that I have. What's the fastest way that I can do to just like test this thing out to like see if it has legs or if it has value and what that value might be. So yeah, I would definitely look at Arduino platforms and their hardware, and there's a whole ecosystem of support going into that space as well.
Thanks a lot, Keith. That clears. I hope our developers start learning into this field and we have more new innovations in the haptic technology field after this. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Devashish, for the questions and Keith for the answers. I think so. That's all we have for now, the questions. And Keith, do you have any message for the audience? Anything you want to say?
Yeah. So what I really want to do is this is like my super lofty goal, right? We've been in the haptic space, and right now we're in the space of haptic navigation. But of course, we see that as only the beginning of what's possible for haptics. Like basically, like we see an entire ecosystem, an entire world where haptic communications kind of underlie, on top of visuals and on top of audio, create a more cohesive experience for people. We're super excited about the VR space. And so there's a lot of opportunity to like pair haptics in VR and to pair haptics in gaming. That's kind of the obvious stuff. But also too, there's a lot of really non-obvious stuff that's really cool out there and that could probably be used as low-cost means to address a lot of problems for a lot of different types of people. And so I really wanted to encourage you to like really explore in this space. Like the obvious is easy, or at least it's obvious, right? And so it's like something into a less obvious form that is also like a deeply meaningful exploration. Like I had to talk to a friend of mine and she mentioned how, her being deaf, her cochlear implant can't hear the sound of running water. So she wanted us to make a device for her that could pick up that particular frequency so she can stop flooding her kitchen sink. Like there's so much space in this idea and in this world of haptics. And when you really, really look at it, right now, you can go to school and you can study graphic design, right? Touch is just as important for the human experience. Like, what happens when this field is so well developed that you can actually go to school and study haptic design? What are the principles of this new design space focused around touch? And so I guess the thing I really want to leave you with is haptics don't need to be like a tertiary, experience that's placed on after you've done all the visuals and all the audio. You can lead with haptics and you can build the audio and the visuals to support the haptic experience. And then you just look at the funnel through a different lens from a different side, and it gives you an entirely different perspective on what's possible and what can be done. So thank you so much for having me, everyone. And looking forward to seeing some awesome explorations from all of you. Ciao.
And thanks a lot for joining us and sharing your knowledge with us. We hope to connect with you again, probably in next show. And